Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of Afternoons with the Ambassador. And with me today, I've got my two good friends, Adega, doctor and author, and Mountains of Elysium, and we are continuing our discussion of Babylon 5 Season 1, and today we're talking about the episode Quality of Mercy. And very quickly to the chat, Speaker for the Dead, good to see you, my friend, and sorry you had to wait so long, but, well, all good things come to those who wait. And gentlemen, how are y'all doing?
Doing good, thanks.
Very special.
I did as happy as a little girl. Teacher, sprockets, Saturday Night Live, all good things. So, well, you know, this we are down to this is our second to last episode of season 1 of Babylon 5, and this is kind of a tricky episode, to be honest with you, because it deals with kind of some heavy subject matter. You do have a few laughs with our two friends, Londo and Lanier, and they get into some hijinks during this episode. So, gentlemen, where do you want to begin?
I suppose maybe maybe we'll start with Londo and Lanier, because the other one is a fairly heavy subject. So what do you think?
Works for
Let
me.
her roll.
Yes, and I think I'll never go gambling with Londo. Definitely not. I think we all know why.
Yeah. Not the best of ideas, for the simple fact that Londo's a sneaky little eel, so to speak.
You know, it'd be okay going out with Londo, just so long as you never hear him say the words, "my dear and good friend." Because every time he does that, he wants money.
Yep. Every single solitary time where you see him searching his pockets, he's like, darn it, I've left my credit shit back in my quarters. Well, then get off your lazy Centauri butt and go get it. That's what I would say to him. I'm not paying for your booze. Pay for your own booze, you lazy bum.
And I just thought it was funny. He just looked at Lanier. Don't apologize for having no money. We'll make do with what little you have.
Yeah.
Definitely would not want to go drinking with him.
Yeah, you don't want to go drinking, you don't want to go gambling, and you most certainly don't want to go to the, let's see, how can I put this politely, gentleman's club with Londo, because something bad invariably will happen. So.
But it usually involves pain.
Yes.
Say one more time, Adega.
It usually involves pain. People he knows either get beat up or dead. You'd think you'd learn after a while.
Although, you know, and I think this is the first time we learned this about Minbari physiology, the fact that if they have alcohol, they go stark raving mad. I'm sorry. You know, that to me is kind of humorous. I wouldn't actually.
I thought it was funny. He was just a half a second away from taking alcohol.
Yep. Woo. Lanier hadn't said something sooner, we could have seen our first crazy Minbari. It would have been Lanier.
And considering how good he is in a fight, that would not have been fun.
No, because he probably would have done just as well as Ivanova did when she went on a tear in that in that casino. Boy. That would have been an interesting scene, because you consider the fact that Lanier has been trained not only as a Minbari but also as a ranger. And Minbari hand-to-hand combat, not to mention their slightly higher pain tolerance and slightly elevated strength. You don't want to tick off a Minbari, particularly if it's Lanier, because, well, how can I say this politely? The guy's a little repressed. So he probably could have torn a nice little swath through both Dark Star and that other bar that him and Londo end up in and everything, where Londo gets caught cheating. So,
Well, considering they were up against 9 different people, I think he performed fairly well.
I would agree. Yep, I would wholeheartedly agree. And of course, I love the resolution of that particular story when the security gets called in to clear out the bar, and Ivanova is walking in the hallway towards one of the transport tubes with Garibaldi, and she's like, "You're not going to believe who the two unidentified parties are," and you don't hear him saying. You hear Garibaldi saying the two. What?
Yeah. At that point, they didn't know how tough a religious caste short person could be, and that Londo actually had some fire in him.
Yes.
Londo getting in trouble is one thing, but getting in a brawl is something totally different.
And Speaker for the Dead actually hits it on the nail. Cheating with his junk. Yeah. Who knew that Centauri genitalia could be so useful? Or multi-purpose. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
particularly when they're saying. Go ahead, Mel.
I was saying when they had the whip crack, when he was retracting, I was going, I think I nearly died laughing the first time I heard it.
I know what you mean. I do. I absolutely know what you mean. Like, whoosh. I'm like, and of course, Londo's saying there, he's like, is anybody else cold? They're like, no, we're all good. And there's a pitcher or something of a beverage or whatever sitting on one of his the speaker said his junk. You know, there's some situations where a guy wouldn't mind an ice pack on his junk, but in this particular instance, it's actually rather painful. So, but yeah, that was a nice little B story that we had this episode, and you know, it just gives us a little more into the background of Lanier being very living a very sheltered life. Let's just put it that way. But the poor Lanier. You can only imagine the expression on his face and everything if they actually showed anything when that one dancer, how can I put this politely, disrobes.
It was funny that Londo had to, he was struggling to get Lanier out of the strip bar after to go gambling.
You think? Yeah. He's like, I want to introduce. Go ahead, Mounts. Go ahead.
And I was saying it does go to say a lot that Lanier was boring the head off of Londo, but Londo, being the diplomat, was still keeping. It's fascinating, yes, but you could just see he was kill me now.
Yeah, well, he says it to that one waitress, and she just kind of pats him on the shoulder, like, "I'm sorry, Londo, you're on your own."
Yeah.
Well, he's actually Lanier's staying there, looking at the dancer, and he's talking about Minbari dialect. Now, can you talk about a guy who can split his focus? Let's be honest here. A beautiful woman disrobes in front of you. The blood kind of leaves the brain. Let's just leave it at that. And he's sitting there, and he's got his religious cast focus going, and he's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Well, Mr. Lanier, you have better focus than most men would."
It also all depends on the libido of a Minbari, where we know the rest of them have a little bit of a problem, but the Minbari, you don't really. Everything seems really calm with them, except when you piss them off.
Or until they get in the throes of passion, and a certain captain that we're about to meet goes, "Woohoo!"
Oh yes.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Anyway, all right. Well, I think we've broken down that part of the episode fairly well. We're ready to jump into the dark and depressing crap. I don't mean it that way. The dark and the more serious topic of the episode.
Well, it is kind of It's
It's
more than
heavy.
just dark. It's with the machine itself that comes into
Mhm.
this. We
Yes.
see it again,
Oh,
but I
yes.
think probably the two bigger parts of the episode is what minds, especially deviant minds or alien minds, do to a telepath, where
Yes.
she describes that there is a high turnover. Burnout is very easy for these
Mhm.
telepaths to go into people's minds and
It
poke
hurts them.
around in someone that has a diseased head and then be able to come back and do it again and again. Now, if we talked about Bester,
Hmm.
that is something from the books, a little bit in the story from the show, the TV show. He actually, at first, volunteered for one of these where they scan into someone who's dying, and
Yeah.
the description was that these people tend to lose a little bit of their soul when they go into it. But for some, well, Buster's twisted. For some
Yeah.
reason, he tended to actually enjoy it, and he would do it over and over again. And there was a philosophy in the books that part of the reason why Bester was such a horrific person was that he had nothing left. He
Yeah.
had lost it all in these people that were dying, and he didn't have a problem going into minds that were disturbed or warped or seeing the body counts like we saw here, where there had to have been, I think I counted 12, part of what he called a symphony of
Yeah.
people that he had
Or
killed.
yeah, if not more. And man, he has killed so many. I mean, you see Drazi, you see Narn, you see Human. I think you see Precari maybe. Um, so many. Yeah, that Mueller guy was seriously twisted. And I can only imagine the trauma. You figure the trauma of somebody that might survive an attack from a psychopath like that, the post-traumatic stress that they go through. Well, imagine that cranked up to 11 for a telepath who can actually go into the person's mind and almost relive all of the murders and anything that person's committed. And Winters actually does to an extent, because the last one she sees Mueller's last victim, which was one of the security personnel there for B5, the one that Garibaldi refers to and everything a few times. And the guy's like, "Dude, we can work this out. You don't have to." And he just just shoots him in cold blood murder, cold blood. And it's just, I don't think sometimes I would want to be a telepath in that particular instance, just for the simple fact that, one, I would be privy to all those horrific things. Not to mention, it would take a strong constitution and a strong mind to be able to deal with stuff like that on a regular basis. And being a telepath, I might just have the notion to just I don't know if this is possible in the B5 universe, to literally lobotomize the person, leave them a vegetable. Not kill them, but just leave them a vegetable where they have to be cared for or whatever.
P11s and 12s can do that.
Oh, can they? All right.
Mhm.
Well,
They do mention it in Lita. Says one of the a killer similar, did something to one of the Psychor, and rather than killing him, they implanted some horrific images into his mind and left him in a psycho ward where he has to be restrained 24/7 because otherwise he'd kill himself.
Yeah.
So it is, and it does show a lot for the Psychor. They're pretty much cut off from the rest of humanity, and they're often portrayed as being evil, the bad guys. But when you see what they have to do, this is one of their civic duties. It's a horrific thing to have to do, and they're basically forced to do it.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. A speaker brings up, I think, one of the best. It was a question I was going to bring up myself. What do you guys think about the punishment of death of personality? and I'll open. We can cover it from there. So I open the floor.
I think when you put this back to back with Passing Through Gethsemane, where you see what the result of death of personality can be. When you meet Brother Edward, you see a wonderful, kind person. But what you see in this episode is who he was before. And it's a very difficult thing because Brother Edward is a new person. They're told that the new personality is put to serve the community that they harmed. That's can be basically a slave. That new person is a decent human being, is a decent person. But yet they're a slave and being punished for something they didn't do. So it is a very difficult concept. It's probably better than the death penalty. I'm opposed to a death penalty, and it's better than being placed in prison. I think I was reading up on some of the backstory, the lore. The reason for the death of personality is also that if the person is shown to be innocent with new evidence, there's a possibility of reconstructing their own personality. So it's not permanent, as we saw in Passing Through Gethsemane. Parts of Brother Edward's past self was resurrected in his memories.
Yes. Adega, what do you think of that of the death of personality punishment?
I think if it was possible, it would be a good alternative. It's not quite as significant or as deep as a death of personality, but I have an uncle, he's since passed away, who, for the majority of his adult life, he was one of those unpleasant people, though he was married and had children. But he, more often than not, was not someone that people found that they could keep company with them for long periods of time. He was one of those people, they were good in short doses, basically. And he was an outstanding policeman, was chief of police in Las Vegas for a while.
Wow.
And at one point, he had gotten ill and needed to have surgery. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was open heart surgery. And there was a problem in the surgery. He got too much oxygen to the brain, which usually will kill a person, or frequently does, just for hyperoxia, not hypoxia. And in his case, when he came out, he remembered just about everything, but it had done something to his personality. He was a very, very pleasant man afterwards. People loved him, and it was a side effect of this surgery. Now, he went on to, make apologies to his first wife. He was married to a second wife who, was even more grateful, although there were certain parts of his personality that kind of changed a little bit. He wasn't as aggressive as he used to be, which made him a really good cop. But taking someone and obliterating what could be the cause of evil, meaning their personality, would be less permanent than doing something, of course, obviously, like killing a person, because if they were executed, and like Elysium was saying, at some point down the line where you find that there is a set of evidence or circumstances where the person was innocent, the punishment is irreversible.
Yeah.
There have been recent developments as of the past 20, 25 years of where they're finding certain loci or locations in the brain that, if properly stimulated or reduced their stimulation, there are alterations in the personality. And they have found, there were some studies that were done in Australia with some of their prison inmates who had certain psychotic issues. And this also goes back to my field of expertise, because we had done the same experiment years ago, except by mechanical, and they were doing theirs more by electrical means to stimulate certain areas of the brain. And they found that these people would have a reversal of these psychopathic, antisocial, kleptomaniac type behaviors. And it's very difficult, because also there's a line of study where people will start saying, well, this is, and we get it for all aspects, and I'm getting really deep here. We get it in all aspects of society, where people will say, I am born this way, or this is an inherited gene. When in reality, we're finding out the brain is very plastic, meaning it can be molded and adapted. And if you start to develop certain habits, or you start exposing yourself to certain things, your brain will mold into those type of belief systems. Say you take someone like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Mm-hmm.
When he was real young, he didn't socialize very well, but instead decided to do weird experiments with animals. And that exposure to his brain started to mold it into doing more demented and twisted things. If he was caught in those early ages and shown to refocus that molding process, from what all science says, he wouldn't have turned out the way he had. Now, the same goes with anything. There is, and I'm probably going to upset some people, but this is hardcore science. There are a lot of people that have certain physical drives nowadays that are out of what genetics are predisposed to. And what is being shown by the hard evidence instead of by the emotional evidence is that predisposition, early abuse, hard exposure to things before puberty tend to distort, warp, change, alter the mind into believing or doing or responding in certain ways that are contrary to what genetics and normal hormone balances will tell. So, long story short, with a death of personality, maybe that personality is gone and you can remold the person, but maybe that alteration to the brain will leave that individual predisposed or wanting the same tendencies, even though it doesn't have the emotional and historical background to make them want to do that. It's just that the brain has now been changed to get its adrenaline and endorphin boosts by harming or stealing or abusing. So I'm not exactly convinced that a death of personality would work.
And honestly, I can actually agree with that, because if you think about it, we see that in some circumstances the death of personality can be somewhat reversed, but unfortunately for the person that has had that procedure done to them, they don't understand what's happening to them. They don't understand what's going on and everything with their own mind. And they're getting all these flashes of memories and all these horrific things and everything are popping up in their mind and their subconscious, excuse me. And
well, the thing is even if all those memories were completely gone, there is, and there's a type of dysphoria too, where say someone who doesn't have the sense of smell or the sense of taste, but they can hear things and it will cause them to taste or cause them to smell. Or there could be where the person is just driven incessantly to cut themselves or pick at scabs, but it is a brain alteration. There's no memory involved. Or one of the weirdest things is there is a physiological way, and we see this on these shows. You think, why can a person do that to themselves? Like they got this genitorture, or where people will the sadomasochism type thing. Yeah. There's actually a way to switch the pleasure pain sensors in the brain semi-permanently. And this person will wake up from their procedure, and reality for them, even though they don't have the memory background, is still screwed up. They can go home at night and they'll be laying in bed, and maybe there's a little coin or a pocket knife or something sitting there, and it digs at their side. And for us, we would jump up and move it. But for the distorted or altered brain, it would think, wow, that's pleasurable. Or they would go home and they would watch a video, and the video would have a cop show, and they would somehow identify with the criminal. It would bring them a thrill. So, like I said, it's the wiring of the brain as well as the personality. And it's tough to say that this would actually work. I don't think it will.
They'll remember the feeling, but not the memory.
Right.
And they won't know where it's coming. They won't know the source.
Right. And think about it. If you were to have say you would sneeze and you had a sexual experience every time you sneezed, you would want to sneeze all the time just because it brings you pleasure. Or say you hit your fist into a wall and it made you feel like you had just had a wonderful experience at an opera or a good meal or something. You would want to keep hitting your face in the wall. You wonder why you go to these insane asylums, at least the ones that they used to, where these people would be banging their heads against the wall. There's a reason for it. It's because the distortion is in there. And no amount of chemicals and oftentimes no amount of therapy will alter that in some of these cases. So
yeah, unfortunately, people sometimes are just born wrong.
And I don't know if they're born wrong like that. That was the whole point. I think it's a developmental thing, because in some cases it can be reversed back. But when you're going through the prime education of the brain, when you're going from the age of 2 to 7, and you're not exposed to proper play, proper association with kids and adults and books and mathematics, then it is set in a distorted sense. Where right now, a lot of the scientists are, at least the good sociologists and psychiatrists, are seeing these children who are trained to, you got to avoid people, you got to put on masks. They're developing deep-seated and pathological paranoias of other human beings. It's detrimental, and this is going to last. We're going to have to deal with these children for a long time.
Yeah. And maybe I misspoke and everything when I said born wrong. Maybe it wasn't so much they were born wrong, but the onset of such damaging psychological trauma to the personality and to the mind has made it to where the person is almost hardwired that way, and they are dysfunctional for the majority of their life. And speaker brings up an interesting point. It may not be a position most everybody agrees with, but no, there's no censorship here. He says either way, in reality, you're still executed. You're executing that person, in my opinion, which I'm okay with. And it's always there's always going to be that debate until we figure out a better way.
Here's the thing, sitting on both sides of it. When a person is executed, I see both sides. One, society in some way, if they're not careful, now starts to devalue human life, which is a horrible, horrible thing. Human life should be at the pinnacle of human society. It should be protected. But then again, if someone is a victim and we allow the person who committed the crime, if they're truly horrific, is it not also making all of society a victim by caring for the perpetrator of that, where some seat of justice has been unmet? Some say that the loss of a life cannot be, two wrongs don't make a right. Well, who's to say that executing someone is a wrong when they are actually guilty? It's a very tough call. It's a very tough call.
Yeah.
There is something, though, who's guilty. I know it's from my own family history. My grandfather was involved in the War of Independence and the Irish Civil War, and he was basically a POW, and there was standing orders for many of them to be shot. And so he could have been executed out of hand for something he did during war, or a society could execute somebody for something that is now arbitrary. So for me, physical death is a terrible thing, and it's why I'm opposed to the death penalty.
Yes.
And Speaker did make a very interesting point. You are still executing that person with the death of personality, though that new person has a chance for maybe to make amends, maybe for life, even if he's not compelled to do something. And it is a very difficult thing, because I do actually see, even though I am opposed to the death penalty, I would agree there are times where I'm going, that was horrific.
Mhm.
That, that you'd feel that the death penalty is merited.
Yeah.
But again, I look back to my own family history. My grandfather could have been executed for what we now call him a hero, but at the time he was called a terrorist.
Well, not to diverge or digress too far off the topic,
Yeah.
there's a Batman story. There's actually an animated movie. It's called Under the Red Hood, and the beginning of that particular story begins with Batman, Bruce Wayne, going to rescue I think it's the second Robin, Tim Drake, and everything from the Joker, and the Joker has Drake. He's kidnapped him. He's captured him. He's got him bound and gagged, and he has been torturing the guy. He's been torturing Drake, beating him with a crowbar and everything else under the sun. And then eventually the building gets blown up by the Joker. And several years later, or however long the passage of time is, it's toward this end of the episode of the movie. Drake confronts Wayne and everything. He's got the Joker there bound and everything. And he's like, either you shoot the Joker and end his life for what he did to me, or I do. And Wayne is like, do you realize how easy for me it would be to shoot him, considering all the horrific things that he has done, not just to you, but to so many others? I mean, I don't know if this particular story takes place before or after the Killing Joke, where Joker renders Barbara Gordon a paraplegic. But Drake is like, he is vehement. He is livid with Wayne, saying, this man whose life you have spared more times than I can count has almost killed me, has killed umpteen dozen others, has maimed more than that, and yet you still will not take his life. Well, if you don't, I will. And if you don't, if you're going to stop me, you're going to have to kill me to do it. And I see where Wayne is coming from, but I also see where Drake is coming from. And when it comes to the question of the death penalty, as a Christian, even I say this, in certain circumstances, and they have to be extreme circumstances, I do support it. But it has to be an extreme case. For if it is a serial killer, if it's a serial rapist, and anything, and the rape can be, I don't care the demographic. If a person is a serial rapist or anything, they are pure predators, and quite frankly, they have no regard for human life. And in my personal opinion, and y'all made this completely change your opinion of me, well, if that's the case, that's the case. I think in those particular circumstances, their life is forfeit because they themselves do not value human life. They have complete and utter disregard for it, and their life should be taken, because you can incarcerate them till they're old and gray, but it's not going to change anything. They aren't going to rehabilitate at this point. And you can try all the therapy, you can try all of the drugs or whatever else you want to try, but something in that person has snapped and they no longer have a regard for human life. And I think to kind of get back on track here, with what Rosen does to Mueller in the episode, I think she was completely justified. I understand her position and what she said to her daughter and to Franklin. She's like, I didn't do the right thing. I did the necessary thing. And that's something that she's got to carry with her for the rest of her life. And I think she took Mueller's life with that alien machine. And, even that alien machine, I think, was a great plot device and everything for this episode. The fact that Rosen did disclose to Franklin that it was a tool of capital punishment. It wasn't meant for specifically holistic ends. But at the same time, she's using it. She's trying to redeem the purpose of that machine for good ends. So, but anyway, any thoughts on that, gentlemen?
I think I would. It's going back to what I said. I would agree. She did the necessary thing. She had no choice but to dial it up to 11 there and then, because he would have killed not just her daughter, but also Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's almost, I feel it's almost contradictory. She was forced into the issue.
Yes.
That basically she executed him in the method that was meant. And she had no choice.
Yeah.
And that's what honestly is what I love about this episode. It's up to you, and there's ambiguity. You can see both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only, I think, had I not watched this series, the full 5 seasons, and not seen Passing Through Gethsemane, and seeing what Mueller could have become, I'd have been, totally 100% right. I'd have done it before he done it, almost within universe.
Yeah.
But when you see the possibility of redemption, you're going, there is. It makes it much more gray.
Yeah, it does. And I'll be the first to admit it does make the whole situation much more gray. And, this episode was written by Straczynski himself. And I think that's why I think he handled this particular issue very well. And, he mingled, or he interwove the levity of the situation with Londo and Lanier with this much heavier topic of, is exchanging one life for another viable? Is it something that we as a society are okay with? And that's one of the true master strokes of Straczynski, is his ability to interweave stories like this and really present something like this that does make you think. So, anyway,
actually,
sorry,
get a shout out, because I was going to go slightly off topic. Well, it's on a vein, but so you fire away and I can catch up after.
There's a set of opposing views just in the story itself, where she, the doctor, killed one. He, the criminal, killed many. She was pained and troubled because she wanted to take life, where he joyed in it.
Yeah.
And then you take, say, like Talia. Most of you at one point or another had someone very sick, and I know, Elysium's had some real personal things with it. All of us have had to have pets but put down at one point or another, and you think of how difficult it is to take, and how hard it is to absorb the fact that there's that loss. And you take Talia, throw her into his mind, and there's all those losses, and this guy enjoyed it. Where the doctor had to take one life and it totally made her a different person. It was totally against her nature. It's just the opposites of one versus many, good versus evil. And it played out very well. We're very fortunate to have her play the Doctor, the actress herself. She did a wonderful job, I thought.
Yes, I would wholeheartedly agree. And for those of you who might not know, Joan Lockhart, who is has a connection with another sci-fi franchise or anything that took place well before Babylon 5, and that's Lost in Space, which Bill Mumy, who plays Lanier, actually, I think, played Will Robinson on that series as well. And, honestly, Lockhart did a wonderful job in portraying the role of Laura Rosen. And I don't remember the name of the actress who played her daughter, but her daughter did a good job as well, I thought. That's the wonderful thing about the show and everything. It hits on so many different beats. You have the comedic, you have the dramatic, you have the introspective, and so many other different things going on in just one particular episode. And you have the beginning of the episode, which is a little bit comedic and everything. You see Ivanova go into Franklin's clinic, which he's running somewhat illegally, and she's like, "Hey, you know what? I don't care that you do this," but she's like, "I at least like to I'd like to be kept in the loop instead of hearing it through the grapevine." And he's like, "Well, you wanted to have him, you want to have a part in all the fun. Sink's back there, go wash up."
What I found interesting there, she did that in her off-duty time.
Yes.
So to keep the books, she did not want to get Franklin in trouble, so it was all off. And she pitched in to help.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the great things. Ivana doesn't mind bending the rules, just as long as she can be a part of it or at least be privy to what's going on, because let's be honest here, Ivana can be somewhat of a rabble rouser herself, but she does it in the right way. She doesn't do it in a way that's going to get anyone necessarily hurt or get herself necessarily in her neck in the ringer. And if she does get her neck in the ringer, she owns up to it. So
easiest way to get her mad at you is leave her out of the loop.
Oh yeah, and we'll learn that and everything in the next couple of seasons or anything. She likes to be involved. She is not one to sit on the sidelines. Far from it. That's what makes Ivanova one of those really great characters that we all just have an affection for. Aside from the physical, which I'm sure just another nerd, if he was here, would probably comment on. Excuse me. But all these characters have their parts and everything to play in the broader universe. But honestly, just seeing them interact with one another is such a joy. It is so nice to see these actors and actresses interplay off of one another, and the personality of their characters is just such a privilege and everything, because you don't see that, unfortunately, very very often anymore in modern sci-fi, or in current. Let me put it another way: in current sci-fi. And as I said, you've got levity, you've got drama, you've got questions of ethics and everything else, and that's what good fiction, what good sci-fi can bring you. And in this particular episode, we get a great dialogue on, well, as the episode is called, the quality of mercy. What exactly do you consider to be more merciful? To take the life of a person who has taken so many, or to rob them of their, rob is not the right word, but to erase their personality that has caused so much harm and implant a brand new one that will make them a beneficial member of society instead. And then, of course, you've got the whole issue of June Lockhart's character, Dr. Rosen, who she was trying to do good, but she as her daughter explains to Franklin, she couldn't keep up with the workload. She started getting addicted to stims, which is something we'll see play out again and everything in a later season. And she messes up, life is lost, and she's carrying that burden. And on top of that, she is crippled with a debilitating disease known as Lake syndrome. I don't know if it's a real syndrome that exists in the world, or if it's something that they made up for the episode or whatever. But considering all the symptoms that she described that she was pumping into Mueller, I can only imagine how hard it could have been for her to deal with arthritis, with her blurred vision, with her intestines, her intestinal tract being on fire, and everything else that she unloaded all of that into Mueller's body. And you see the excruciating pain on his face, and you're like, you deserve this. You have taken so many lives, you have destroyed so much. And for whatever reason and everything, we don't know the pathology and everything behind Mueller. We don't know what caused him to come to be the person that he is and everything in this episode. And Adega, you hit upon it. It could have been some sort of form of abuse. It could have been any number of factors that caused him to turn into a psychopathic killer who had a complete or disregard for life, and not just human life, but all life, really, except for his
Also
own.
says a lot about Garibaldi, where he can pick that out just by looking at the guy.
Yeah.
He sensed it.
And I think it was Speaker that commented on the actor that played Mueller always plays bad guys. So obviously this guy is good at playing a heavy.
He's Corporal, was it Private Drake in Aliens?
That's right.
Yeah.
And
dang, I forgot. I thought, all the times I watched this, I never caught that. Good catch, Mountains. Nice one.
And
he was a good guy there, though.
Yeah, he was a good guy in that particular instance.
Although he's pretty much a similar character, only with control and given under state control. So, he still had the same, it's not the same aggression, the same thing, but it was controlled and used for benefit. And he did have more in that movie. He did have more sympathy. He had that really great connection with Vasquez.
Yeah, good. Alicia, good catch, man. I never caught that until you said it, because it just clicked. That is Drake. Dang, how did I miss that? And how many times have I watched Aliens? Excuse me. But yeah,
I was just thinking when you were mentioning Dr. Rosen, she was, for that machine, she was doing her penance for the life that was lost because of her STEM addiction. Yeah. Because she was because you could see what happened to her when she gave him the feeling, the Lake syndrome. She was taking everyone's ailments on herself, taking their pain, almost as penance for the one life she lost through a mistake. So that woman, really, you see the love she has for healing, how much she wants to do good. And she's basically a mirror for Franklin, because he is the same person. Yeah. He will do the same as her, and he does go as far as her to try and help, almost with as much tragic consequences.
Yeah. Well, this is a purely hypothetical and everything. What do you guys think? Do you think Rosa would have been able to eventually lay down her burden of taking Mueller's life? You figure she's done enough penance and everything. Do you think she was ever able to reconcile? I mean, this is purely hypothetical. Do you think she's ever able to reconcile in her own mind and lay to rest the fact that she took Mueller's life, considering the type of person he was?
Well, something like that you won't ever completely get over, but I would imagine the shock of what had just happened was still set in. And after 6 months to a year, that shock could be completely abated, and then it would deal more with her paradigm of life, of healing, being a doctor. And I imagine that somewhere along the line, justification will come in, and she'll be able to sleep at night without having too many nightmares. But there's always going to be that little bit that, she was the cause. So I think for the most part, yes, but never quite completely.
Well, let me flip. Well, Mountains, go ahead if you want to give your opinion.
I was saying, almost want to say the same thing, that she is, for me, she's a sort of person who will carry that with her. And I think she will use that for good, as she did with the alien healing machine. Or not, we're calling it a healing machine. It was originally for execution. But she
Yeah.
turned something that was essentially for evil, because it was taking somebody's life, like in Death Walker, taking a life to save another.
Yes.
So she will always carry. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
no, but I think it's something. It can be a motivate. It will be a motivation for her. And I'd love. It's funny. I'd like to see even a short story, somebody doing something. What did she do? Because it is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
What does she do?
Well, and let me flip this question on its head. If it was one of you, would you be able to get over taking Mueller's life if you're in a similar situation or in that same situation?
I kind of know the answer to that. I haven't taken anyone's life, but I do have a friend who's very similar to me. We think a lot alike. We've grown up together. Our philosophies are very similar. And he's an LA sheriff. He's about ready to retire. And he was faced with a gun battle with a guy who wanted death by cop. He shot his partner in the ear, and so my friend killed the guy. And I asked him about it, and he said, "You know what? It was him or me, and he was a bad guy, and I dropped him, and that's just the way it is." They sent him to the department psychologist, and there was no issue. He knew right from wrong. He knew good and bad. What was evil, what was good, and he did what was good, and he's able to live with it without. And he would be honest with me. This is one of those people where you can tell when they're being honest. Plus, you know when they're, or they will be honest with you. So it didn't trouble him. And knowing how similar we are, it wouldn't bother me either. I hate to say it, but it wouldn't.
Alicia, how about you?
It's difficult. I think somewhat similar to Adega. I think I'd feel like it had to be done, especially if someone came in and hurt my wife.
Yeah.
If someone threatened my family, even a stranger that I didn't know, if somebody could kill them, you'd want to put them down. If by accident you kill them, or intention to prevent another, I think I would use it as a motivation. But you'd have to move on. You can't dwell on it, but it would always be with you. And it's something that in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years time, you'll wake up in a cold sweat wondering what could I have done something different.
I have been in a position I've never killed anyone, but there's been situations where I don't want to get into because I don't want you guys to think one way or the other about me, but let's just say there are people that are grateful that I was there. But I've also been in situations where I didn't act before I learned to act. That hurts me every single day.
I think we've all been there.
There,
I know.
there was this was pretty severe. I won't get into details. I mean, it was horrific stuff that they don't show in movies, and my hands were tied where I couldn't, and it was killing me that I couldn't, and it still haunts me to the point where now there is one instance a few years back where this girl was getting killed by her boyfriend with a knife, and I got involved, and she's okay. But the impressions that I had on the earlier incident where I couldn't do anything but wanted to, and it got really horrific, there was no doubt, there was no hesitation, there was no thought for myself or anything else. It had to end in any way, shape, or means, and that became a motivator to where, like I said, if I'm put in that position, I would get it done, and I wouldn't regret it afterwards.
Right. Well, I'll go on camera for this. I have family and friends alike who have either served in the military or served in law enforcement, and I've had the opportunity to talk with them on occasion about their time in service, both in law enforcement and military. And I never went into specifics because I knew it would make them uncomfortable. I always asked them, did you ever take an action that you regret? Did you ever get into the heat of combat or in the heat of a moment and do something that you look back now and kind of shake your head, which you hadn't? And every time they look at me, they answer, they say, no. I did my service, I did my duty, and they have no regrets. And, and speaking for myself, I don't want to sound cheesy or corny when I say this, but there's a line from the first X-Men movie that Charles Xavier says to Magneto there in his prison. I pity the poor soul who comes to that school looking for trouble. I pity the poor soul whoever comes looking for trouble at my doorstep. They will not like the ambassador they meet on that day. Because when it comes to my family and my friends, there is me and then there is God. You come looking for trouble, you will meet your maker. So, and Jens Pender, and Jens, good to see you, my friend, as always. He says it perfectly. To protect one's life and protect the one of another in self-defense. Yes, absolutely. So, well, folks, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I know this was kind of a heavier episode. I know we've had some heavier episodes in the past, but I think this was a good episode. I'm glad we did discuss it. I hope you all found our discussion interesting. And everything, as always, if you enjoyed this, by all means, share it out and hit that like button. If you come across this and you have not subscribed, consider subscribing and do all those things. And to the chat very quickly, Fiona Wolf, good to see you, my dear. It is always awesome to have you in the chat.
Just one thing, too, that I almost regret that we didn't do ahead of time. I'll let you do your closing. There is an episode in Stargate where they were dealing with a duplicate or an altered universe, and I think it was Stargate, and one guy had one incident that changed his life from being a brilliant scientist to a killer. And that is very similar, the duality between those episodes. So any of you can think about that, that would be a good one to watch as well.
I'll have to look it up and everything, because I don't have any of the seasons of Stargate on hand and everything. I have the movie, the everything, but I don't have any of the episode seasons or anything. But thanks for bringing that up, Adeg. I appreciate it. So, and yeah, that'll be coming up in a couple of seasons. We'll get to it in due course. So, but anyways, folks, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you all of you and everything for tuning in. I hope, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the discussion. And we'll be back next week, same time, and everything, 2 p.m. Central and everything, with the season 1 finale of Babylon 5. Chrysalis. So be sure to tune in for that. And of course, this Friday night, I'll be having my 300 subscriber celebration stream. And as promised, we're going to discuss music of the 90s. We're going to do some karaoke. So be sure to tune in for that. Gentlemen, is there anything you want to bring up for your channels before we close out?
No, nothing planned at the moment.
For me, I think for the time being, I'm just going to be posting once a week.
Yeah, I know you
more work to do now than I ever did. Now that I signed with a traditional publishing company, so it's keeping me busy.
Awesome! Congratulations! And I know you're still working on your newest work. I'm gonna let you pronounce it because I may butcher it.
Olganza.
The Algonza Witches. So
Yeah.
be sure to head over there and check out Odega's channel. He's got Echoes of North still up. He's still got the Blood Witch. At least I'm assuming you do. And and Children of the Dragon.
That one's the one that I signed for. A publishing company saw it and they said, we are going to publish your book and we're going to give you good compensation for it. And I go,
outstanding.
All right. And I still have control over it. So, so can't argue with that.
That's outstanding.
I can't tell you any more though, because the rest is on a do not disclose agreement.
Yeah. And I understand that and I respect it wholeheartedly. So, but still, congratulations. All the success you've had is well earned. So, all right, folks. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night. I'll see you Friday night. And until next time, this is the Ambassadors signing off.